Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. I have more of your own stories to read today, so get ready to be terrified. As always, if you have any stories you'd like for me to share, please send them to the email in the description and just put YouTube in the subject line. But without further ado, let's get into it. I have two stories, one personal and the other one a shared experience. The first story. When I was around 10 or 9, I had just started to get really interested in the paranormal and whatnot. I still am. I always heard stuff in and around my house late at night. We live on a somewhat busy street, which isn't really full of good people. Well, one random night, I wake up at around 3. This wasn't that unusual for me, as my mother walks my dog at this time, so I get woken up when he barks. I hear my mother go to take the dog for a walk and come back, and I hear her get back in bed and try to sleep again. I couldn't sleep for the next few minutes when suddenly I hear knocks on my window. It couldn't have been my dog because these knocks were unusual. My window shook, and it was audible. I buried myself under my blankets, and I was frozen with fear. I'd never been this scared before, and I just decided to shut my eyes and pretend I was asleep. Well, the knocking keeps going, and the weirdest thing was how it kept knocking in threes. Like one knock, second knock, third knock. Pause for 5 seconds, and then repeat. I was terrified, but eventually went back to sleep. I don't remember if I slept while the knocks were going on, but it was genuinely terrifying. The second story. Me and my friends are, as I've mentioned before, really interested in paranormal stuff, and we would do rituals as a joke at school during PE. Well, one PE period, we were taking it a bit too far. Our school had a ground where there used to be a parked bus. We don't know why, but it was there, and students would hang around behind it because it was just a cool and dark space. This took place during the summer, so it wasn't that uncommon for students to be there. So as I was saying, my friends and I went behind the bus and drew a star on the ground in a circle around it. Then we held hands and moved around in a circle, chanting random stuff. We had a group of about 7. 3 of the 7 stayed out and 4 of us were behind the bus. As soon as we'd finished chanting, a huge branch of a tree above us fell on my friend. She fortunately moved away in time, or else it would have hit her directly in the head, but she wasn't hurt much. We took a second to register what had just happened and then ran out screaming, frantically telling the other 3 what happened while kind of laughing and panicking. We never tried stuff like that again, on that ground at all. Off topic, but one of the multiple trees on that same ground had a bunch of rocks, assuming, and bags tied to its branches. Don't know what that's about, but just felt like adding it. That tree got cut down about a year after the incident happened. The bags with rocks. I don't know what that could be. Do you guys know what that could be? I don't know. Alright, let's get on to the next story. My name is also Morgan. I believe there has been an entity in my life that has been watching over and protecting me since I was a child. I grew up in upstate New York and had my first encounter with this entity when I was around 3. My bedroom was off from the living room, and there was a few times I'd wake up early, walk to the living room, and talk with a woman named Sharon. I never saw Sharon's face or appearance, but I could feel her, hear her, and smell her. She smelled slightly like the house when you turn on the furnace in the late fall, for the first time since the year before. During my encounters with Sharon as a child, I'd sit on the couch and would enter a sort of trance. I didn't feel unsafe, but I did lose the strength in my hands. I remember trying to grip the pillow next to me on the couch and being unable to. I sometimes felt like I was floating, and I could hear Sharon's soft and distant voice asking me, "Hello, Morgan, how are you?" She was a soothing presence. My uncle moved in soon after and took my room, and I moved upstairs with my sisters. He never claimed to experience anything weird while he lived with us, and I also never heard or saw Sharon again as a child. Fast forward maybe 15-ish years to college, I attended university in the tri-state area and still live in that area. I took a theater class during a winter session to get extra credits. During one of the classes, the professor asked all of us to tell a wild story or an incredible experience that we all had. At this point, I had never spoke of Sharon and the encounters I had with her as a very young child. I figured when it was my turn, this would be a great opportunity to share. I did. The entire class was invested and almost shook when I told the story. Some believed me, and some probably thought I was a weirdo. When I left the theater hall, I took an old way back that most of the students didn't take. I liked looking at the old props that had been forgotten to time. As I was approaching the stairs to leave, I smell the furnace, and I hear a very gentle, "Hi Morgan, how are you?" I stopped for a second and then kept going and left the building. I wasn't scared, but I was shocked. This entity was still with me after all these years. About a year or 2 after that, I went to a psychic to get a general reading on my life out of curiosity. The reader told me some basic things that I assume would fit most people, but she said something that she couldn't possibly know. She said that I had an abnormal number of angels around me that are protecting me. She said one angel in particular's name is coming straight through is either Sherry or Sharon, and that she's been with me since I was young. I thanked the reader for her help and was on my way. I haven't personally heard from or experienced Sharon since that day in the theater hall. I would like to think Sharon is a benevolent entity, as I've never felt scared of her. Have you ever experienced a positive protective entity before? There's definitely a lot of things that follow me around that I think protect me. I also think that my house spirits really look after me, so there's definitely a huge possibility that that's what that is. But yeah, I definitely would keep her around. She seems really sweet. It's kind of strange that your hands go numb. I find that a little weird, but her being around, yeah, if you don't get a bad feeling, I would definitely keep her around. All right, story number 3. Before I start, I want to say that I'm a very spiritual person and I've had lots of paranormal experiences. Whatever dark energy that was in my house is now gone, and the story takes place a couple months ago. I've lived here for around 7 years, and when we first moved in, nothing ever happened. But when my cousin moved in with her baby, he would go in the hallway, even if it was pitch dark, and he would talk to nothing and call it Sissy. Since all this started, we have come to the conclusion that she isn't an evil spirit. She just kind of feels like she's a ghost who happens to be here. Me and my sister like to add her name into our conversations sometimes so she doesn't get lonely, like we would a friend. We've noticed that if we're quiet and just playing on our phones, we'll hear a knock like she's bored, and then we start talking to each other and she's entertained. But here's where it gets creepy. One night I was washing my face and I felt a warm feeling on my back, like something was standing behind me. I've never felt Sissy, but sometimes I can feel her presence, but not like this. This felt bad. I immediately leave the room and go back to my bedroom that I shared with my sister. The bathroom is right beside my bedroom, so it wasn't far. When I get in the room, I was freaking out, and my sister asked what happened. She asked if I went down the hallway because she heard footsteps, and I didn't go down the hallway. When I told her what happened in the bathroom, I started crying. I've had a lot of experiences with ghosts, and one has never freaked me out this bad. I cleansed my room a good 3 times in a row because I was so scared. A couple of weeks passed and I hadn't felt the thing again, and then I was in the bathroom again and felt it. This time I stood my ground and said, if you're trying to scare me, it won't work. And if you're not doing it to scare me, please stop because it makes me uncomfortable, and I've never felt it since. Here's where it gets double creepy. Before I start this part, I want to note that she would admit that there were ghosts in the house, but she wouldn't admit that it was bad, even though her son had woken up with a handprint on his back, and her waking up to the kids crying pointing down the hallway. One night, me and my sister went to my cousin's apartment because we lived in a complex. Now, I never really went to her apartment for long, maybe 30 minutes at a time, because I knew deep down there was something bad there. Being there for too long would make me sick to my stomach or get lightheaded. She never believed me when I told her, so I just kept quiet. Me and my sister had thought of something to talk to the spirits without using anything scary, so we would just turn the air and fans off to make sure there was no air flowing in the room. Then we would light a candle far away from us to where our breath wouldn't affect it. We would ask a yes or no question to move the candle flame for yes and don't move it for no. The night goes on, and after a couple of hours of debunking things to make sure it's right or not, we find out there's 3 people in my cousin's apartment. A woman, her son, and something they wouldn't talk about. The woman was talkative and would never answer anything we asked. When we asked if there was something or someone else with her and her son, it went silent. She would answer a question for at least 5 minutes, like she was scared. Then my sister decides to ask a question. Did a man follow me and my sister here? And the candle moved yes. This freaked us out because it was before I stood my ground with that scary presence in our apartment. When we asked if he knew the other spirit that was there, she went silent, like she was done talking and left the room. When we get back to my apartment, we cleansed ourselves in our room. Ugh, I'm glad nothing else has happened. Holy crap. Ugh. Alright, let's read one final story. Last fall, I decided to stay in my grandfather's old house for the weekend. It had been empty for years, and my family had left it to me in his will. I wanted to clean it up and see if it was worth keeping. The house was isolated, surrounded by dense woods, which made it even more eerie at nightfall. The first night was quiet. I spent most of it sorting through old boxes and dust-covered furniture, and I finally went to bed around midnight but couldn't sleep. The house creaked and groaned with every gust of wind, and I kept hearing faint footsteps upstairs. At around 3 in the morning, I hear a distinct knocking sound coming from the attic. It was rhythmic, almost like someone was trying to get my attention. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and headed up to the attic. The old wooden stair creaked under my weight, and the air grew colder as I approached the attic door. I opened it slowly, and the flashlight flickered to life, casting long shadows on the walls. The attic was filled with old furniture, dusty and forgotten. The knocking had stopped, but then I hear a whisper, faint and barely audible. I scanned the room with my flashlight, finally landing on an old rocking chair in the corner. It was moving gently, back and forth on its own. My heart raced. I approached the chair, trying to dismiss the idea that something supernatural was happening. As I get closer, the room grew colder. I saw a faint, translucent figure sitting in the chair, a woman in old-fashioned clothing with a sorrowful expression. Her eyes seemed to look right through me. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were rooted at the spot. Suddenly, this figure begins to fade away, and the temperature in the room returns to normal. The rocking chair stops moving. I backed out of the attic, the door slamming shut behind me. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the living room, unable to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I found an old photograph among the attic's belongings. It was of a woman who looked just like the figure I saw. I learned from an old neighbor that she had been my great-grandmother who had passed away many years ago. My neighbor mentioned that she used to sit in the rocking chair every evening waiting for her husband to come home. I never stayed in that house alone again, and the experience left me with an eerie sense of connection to my family's past and a lingering unease about the old house and its restless inhabitants. That reminded me loosely of one of my own paranormal stories, and I'm going to share it here, even though it'll probably end up in another video on here as well. But I saw a figure on my family's farm, like in the barn one night, and I didn't recognize it. It was this older woman. She had like a dress up to her like neck, you know, one of the high collars, and her hair was in a tight bun, and she was scowling at me. Like, she did not like that I existed. And I remember going home and, you know, thinking about it, and I ended up back at my parents' house, and I was just talking to them about it. I was like, you know, I saw this figure, because they know I see things like that. And my dad kind of got weird, and he got up and walked out of the room. I was like rummaging through something in their office space, and he came back with a picture, and he handed it to me, and it was the exact figure I saw. And I was like, who is this? And he was like, that is your great-grandmother. I don't know what beef I have with my great-grandmother, but she was not happy to see me at all. At all. But seeing things and then getting confirmation that, you know, it's real, it's just not fun. Anyways, that is all for today's stories. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me and getting scared with me, and I will see you again tomorrow.